Mara had always felt different, like she didn't quite belong to this world. A part of her had always been drawn to the mysterious, the unexplained, the dark corners of existence that others feared. But nothing could have prepared her for the night she met him. It was after midnight, the city streets empty as she wandered home from her late shift at the bookstore. That was when she saw him, a man cloaked in shadows, standing beneath a flickering streetlight. He wasn't just handsome, he was ethereal, his presence making the air hum with an unseen force. "You can see me," he said, his voice deep and haunting. Mara hesitated. "Of course, I can. Why wouldn't I?" A small, sad smile tugged at his lips. "Because most people cannot." She should have run. Every instinct told her to. But something about him pulled her in. When he introduced himself as Azrael, she laughed at first, thinking he was joking. But then his eyes darkened, and the world around them seemed to dim. "I am Death," he whispered. "And you were never supposed to see me." Yet, against all reason, she didn't fear him. Instead, she found herself wanting to know more. To understand him, to touch him. Days turned into weeks, weeks into months, and before she knew it, she had fallen in love with the Grim Reaper himself. Azrael was not the cold, emotionless being legends spoke of. He was gentle, weary, burdened by the weight of millennia. And for the first time in eternity, he allowed himself to love. But love between a mortal and death was never meant to be. Mara woke one morning with a terrible feeling twisting in her stomach. Something was wrong. She had been feeling strange for weeks, fatigue, nausea, an unnatural warmth in her veins, but had dismissed it. Now, as she stared at the pregnancy test in her shaking hands, she realized the impossible had happened. She was pregnant, with Death's child. Panic surged through her as she rushed to Azrael, her voice trembling as she told him. His reaction was not what she expected. His entire body stiffened, his usually calm expression turning to pure horror. "This cannot be," he whispered, stepping away from her as if she were something dangerous. "It is not meant to happen." "Well, it has," she snapped, fear turning into anger. "What does this mean, Azrael?" He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he turned away, staring into the void as though searching for something. Finally, he looked back at her, his voice hollow. "You carry the Harbinger." Mara's blood turned to ice. "The Harbinger," she repeated. Azrael's hands clenched at his sides. "A child of death is not meant to exist. It is a being of both life and death, a force that disrupts the balance of the universe. It is prophesied that if such a child is ever born, it will bring the end of all things." The world around her seemed to tilt. "That's impossible," she said. "It's just a baby." Azrael shook his head, pain flashing across his face. "No, it is a force beyond mortal understanding. And his voice broke. "I have been sent to take it before it is born." Mara took a step back, her hands instinctively going to her stomach. "You're saying you have to kill our child?" Silence. Azrael didn't answer. And that was answer enough. Mara refused to accept it. She ran. For the first time in her life, she truly understood what it meant to fear death, not because she was afraid of dying, but because death was the man she loved, and he was hunting their child. She fled the city, going off the grid, hiding in places where even shadows seemed afraid to linger. But no matter where she went, she felt him. The air would grow colder, the night unnaturally silent. She knew he was near, watching, waiting. Every time she saw him, her heart shattered. He never tried to hurt her, never forced her hand. Instead, he simply appeared, his expression filled with an unbearable sorrow. "Mara, you cannot run forever," he whispered one night as she hid in an abandoned church. She turned to him, fury and heartbreak warring inside her. "Then stop chasing me. This is our child, Azrael. Do you really believe it's a monster?" His jaw tightened. "It is not about belief. It is fate." "Then change it," she begged. "If you love me, change it." His silence was the most painful answer of all. Mara's labor began under a blood-red sky. The heavens trembled, the air crackling with energy as she screamed in agony. She had taken refuge deep in the mountains, surrounded by ancient stone, but she knew there was no place left to hide. Azrael was coming. Pain racked her body as the child fought its way into the world. She could feel it, power beyond comprehension surging through her veins. The earth trembled, the stars flickered. This was no ordinary birth. This was something cosmic, something divine. Then, as the final scream tore from her lips, silence fell. Mara gasped, her heart pounding as she looked down. In her arms lay a child unlike any she had ever seen. Its skin shimmered like stardust, its eyes holding the weight of eternity. The baby did not cry. It simply watched her, and smiled. Tears blurred her vision. "My baby," she whispered. Then the shadows moved. Azrael stepped forward, his scythe gleaming in the dim light. His face was unreadable, but Mara could see the torment in his eyes. "I cannot let it live," he said, voice breaking. Mara clutched the child to her chest. "You will have to kill me first." Azrael hesitated. For the first time, death himself was uncertain. And then, the baby reached out, tiny fingers brushing against Azrael's hand. The moment their skin touched, the universe seemed to shift. Azrael gasped, dropping his scythe. He staggered back, eyes wide with something Mara had never seen before. "Fear. No," he whispered. "This child is not the end." Mara stared at him, her heart pounding. "What do you mean?" Azrael fell to his knees. "I was wrong. The Harbinger does not bring destruction, it brings change. The world did not end. The apocalypse never came. Instead, something new began. The child, named Solas, grew with powers beyond imagination. He could touch the dying and grant them peace. He could see into the past and the future. He was neither life nor death, but something in between. Azrael remained by Mara's side, no longer her hunter but her protector. He had broken the rules of existence for her, defied fate itself. And in doing so, he had found something he never thought possible. Hope. And so, the Grim Reaper stayed, not as a collector of souls, but as a father. Because, for the first time in all of eternity, death had created life.